Can you believe the interesting history behind the NHL expansion team that's become a dominant force in the league? The Florida Panthers, since the very beginning, have been an interesting expansion team. They were put in an odd area for hockey with an unknown fan base and have become an important part of the city's culture. The Florida Panthers have brought a winning culture to South Florida. As an expansion team, they've been in existence since 1993. But let's establish right off the bat that they've been put into an odd area or a weird location. Instead of playing in Miami or playing in Fort Lauderdale, they play in a suburb called Sunrise, Florida. Now, it's not too far from Fort Lauderdale or Miami, but it's a unique area where they play. Now that we've established that, let's take a deep dive into the history of the Florida Panthers. Believe it or not, the Florida Panthers have their roots in an extremely successful businessman. Wayne Huizenga was a business mogul who built empires, and he was the driving force behind hockey and professional sports in South Florida. Wayne Huizenga started the Southern Sanitation Service Company in 1962 after he borrowed $5,000 from his father. He was following in the footsteps of his grandfather, who ran his own small garbage company many decades before. This small company that Wayne started would have only one truck, but he would aggressively market himself to acquire new customers. In the late 60s, Wayne would change the name of his organization to Waste Management. He would acquire over 133 small-time trash haulers, and by 1972, he would go public. Waste Management would continue to grow and develop throughout the 70s and 80s. He would leave the company in 1984 and begin working on his next business venture. And by 1987, he was ready to make a big move. He would go about acquiring Blockbuster videos. And by 1994, he built Blockbuster into the empire any 90s kid knows. He would also go on to develop companies like AutoNation as well in 1997. But he was most well known and most recognized for the impact that he had on Blockbuster. These successful business ventures meant Wayne had more money to expand his empire further. He had become a billionaire. Before he brought hockey to the region, he first dabbled in the world of sports with the Miami Dolphins. In the early 1990s, the Dolphins were struggling and had financial hardship. Because of this, Wayne would be able to purchase 15% of the franchise. The original owner, Joe Robbie, had passed away, and the family was looking to sell the team. Because of these challenges that they faced with financial hardships, Wayne saw an opportunity. He realized that 15% ownership was a bigger picture and a bigger play. He realized that he could expand into the world of sports and increase his ownership as time went on. He would gain full ownership in 1994 when he purchased the team for $115 million. He came to the realization with the Dolphins that he could have success in the field of sports, especially in Miami and Southern Florida. In June of 1991, he would bring baseball to South Florida, paying the $95 million expansion fee to bring the Florida Marlins to Miami. He originally thought about calling the team the Florida Flamingos, but would end up with the Marlins. This was his second venture in the world of sports in South Florida. He was making a name for himself, and people knew who Wayne Huizenga was when he walked in the room. Wayne had his eyes set on another team to go into his sports portfolio. Hockey had already entered the state of Florida with the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Lightning proved that they could hold a fan base within the state, but many were skeptical that it could work in South Florida. On December 10th, 1992, the NHL awarded two brand new hockey teams for the 93-94 season. These teams would be the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, who had the backing of the Walt Disney Company, and the NHL knew with Disney's support, the team would be successful in Anaheim. They would also award a team to Wayne Huizenga. The NHL understood that Wayne's financial backing, paired with his power in South Florida, was the perfect storm for a successful team. It would cost him $50 million to enter the league, and they would announce that they would share an arena with the Miami Heat. This meant, for the first time since 1939, professional hockey was in South Florida. To set the scene of the executive office, Nobody knew or was prepared for hockey in South Florida. They did not have the knowledge or the business acumen to run a hockey team, but they took examples from other sports leagues and they built out, as Wayne had done in the past, a successful business. On April 10th, 1993, in a press conference in Fort Lauderdale, the team would announce that they would be named the Florida Panthers based off the big endangered species of cat in South Florida. Little did they know, Huizenga had already planned on the Panthers' names years before, as he had purchased it from a Tampa investment team who wanted to bring a baseball team to the Tampa area with the same name. The team would participate in both the expansion draft and the 1993 NHL draft. The draft would be the leading driver behind talent for the Florida Panthers. The Panthers would bring in talented players like John Van Beesbrook in the net, as well as Rob Niedermeyer and Scott Mellanby. These incredible players meant good talent for early on for South Florida. Because of this talent, they would actually have a relatively strong success as an expansion team. Many consider the Florida Panthers as one of the most successful expansion teams in hockey history, as the team barely missed out on a playoff spot in 1994. It also proved that they could drive fans to South Florida, averaging around 14,500, which was around 94% capacity at the Miami Arena. In 1996, the Florida Panthers would make a trip to the Stanley Cup Finals. In just 3 years, they went from expansion team to a leader in the NHL. The Panthers shocked the world by beating the Bruins in the first round and the Flyers, the number 1 seed, in the second round, and then finishing it off with the number 2 seed, the Pittsburgh Penguins, in the third round. This would lead them to the Stanley Cup Finals, where they would lose to the Colorado Avalanche. The Panthers would be swept in that finals, but it was apparent that an expansion team in South Florida could have success in the NHL. Because of the early success of the Florida Panthers, it was decided that a new arena would be needed. In 1998, they decided to bring the team to Sunrise, Florida, which is a suburban town outside of Fort Lauderdale and Miami. It brought up a lot of questions during the time period, whether or not a hockey team could have success outside of a major city. The driving reason behind this change was the Sawgrass Expressway. It made travel much easier, and it got rid of the congestion issues that Miami presented, as it was a lot of challenges around moving people in and out of the arena for hockey games. Another reason was a growing fan base, with more people coming after their Stanley Cup appearance. That meant more interest and a growing fan base, especially outside of the city of Miami. This meant they needed to accommodate larger crowds. They no longer wanted to share an arena with the Miami Heat. But probably the biggest driving force was the fact that Broward County saw the value of bringing a team to Sunrise. They saw that the non-congestion made it easy to latch on the fans from Miami and Fort Lauderdale, and it also made it easy to attract the team to Sunrise. With tax dollars paying for the stadium, it meant that the Florida Panthers would not have to shell out as much money as they originally thought for a new arena. Paired with the growing area and the investments, it made for a perfect storm. Wayne would sell the team in 2001, and throughout the 2000s, they would struggle. It wouldn't be until recently that they would be back to peak Florida hockey. For the past 4 years in the 2020s, they have been a dominant team, which many expect will eventually win a Stanley Cup in the 2020s. What are your expectations for the Florida Panthers? Do you think their fan base will continue to grow in South Florida? Do you find it odd where their stadium or arena is located? Thanks so much for watching. We appreciate all of you. Please comment, like, and subscribe. We love hearing from all of you. Thanks for watching. Believable Truths.